Welcome back to the ABCs of ERP and Beyond, the podcast all around enterprise resource planning and the benefits that it brings the modern world of business. So this podcast is really focused on those people that might not even know what ERP stands for. Maybe you're still on QuickBooks or throwing Excel files at each part of the department in your business, and you want to expand and you need to grow out of that and you're looking for a system that can help you. Well, the ABCs of ERP and Beyond is a podcast all around that. And today I'm going to cut straight into it, because normally these kind of episodes where we showcase something, I'm the one sitting back eating popcorn as Nirav does all of the hard work. But this time it's the other way around. So I'm going to throw it straight over to Nirav. Nirav, what are we doing today?
We are talking about probably one of the most powerful and underrated features inside Acumatica. So if you're an Acumatica user or thinking about Acumatica, you don't want to miss this episode, because this is going to open you up to really understanding your business and how to do it in a very kind of non-technical way, which I think is huge. It kind of blows open the doors for, in terms of how Acumatica separates itself from its competitors. And that function that we're talking about today is going to be generic inquiries. And generic inquiries, kind of real quickly, is a way to query, filter, join, display your Acumatica data without needing to know SQL or complex programming, right? And that's been always the thing with ERPs. Traditionally, if you wanted to pull data out, mine that data out of the system, you needed a programmer, you needed to have database skills, you needed to understand how to write reports, right? And needed to know all this information before you could do that. But now, within Acumatica, not now, it's been here for a while, but this functionality called generic inquiries, to me, is a game changer. It's the ability for really any user, as long as they know which screens they need to pull data from, they could really easily create their own specific views, see that data practically real time, right? Because as the transactions are happening inside Acumatica, essentially though that data gets exposed real time as long as you refresh that generic inquiry. And then that generic inquiry becomes a foundation for different type of reports and dashboards, right? And when that becomes a foundation, you could take that generic inquiry and now expose that data to Excel, Power BI that we're going to see today, right? Mobile customizations, other GIs if you need to, right? And make this really a powerful day-to-day type of usage you get out of your data, right? Because Acumatica has like its own screens and kind of what it thinks, how you should be handling your day-to-day. But this is where you could take your data and make Acumatica kind of melt it on top of your business. And it becomes your system at the end of the day. It's not like a generic Acumatica, it becomes your system, right? So what we're going to go today is, again, generic inquiries, and Peter's going to be walking us through this process of creating a generic inquiry on an example. And once he creates that generic inquiry, he's going to expose that data out to Power BI and show us how that Power BI report will look off of this generic inquiry we create inside Acumatica. So don't feel like it's too complicated. It's going to really be a powerful tool for you to kind of implement right away. Every installation of Acumatica comes with generic inquiries. So whether if you have Power BI or not, I think that's a separate licensing issue, but you can really expose this to any other BI tool that you have or are currently using. The concept would be the same, but I think you're going to get a lot of value out of this and actionable tips that you could use right away in your Acumatica instance to start creating generic inquiries. So Peter, Peter, by the way, is a guru of data. He lives in data every single day, if you haven't noticed, based on our previous podcast. And he is really, understands this process really, really well. So, Peter, with that, I'll let you take it away. I may pepper in a few questions, but you're much smarter than I am in
No
this
curveball.
topic.
We're really no unplanned. Well, we haven't actually planned any questions, but let's keep them easy. It's Sunday afternoon over here.
Yeah.
Okay, but you're right. The idea of generic inquiries or GIs is a way to have the ability to pull data together without having to know SQL and the entire backend structure. So it's almost like a low code, no code environment that allows you to pick pieces of data. Although I would say that you'd still need some understanding of how tables are connected, right?
Yeah.
Because for a GI, essentially, you're thinking about maybe 4 steps. 1, choosing the tables. 2, how those tables then connect to each other. How are they related to each other? 3, what data fields do you now want to show and expose on your GI screen? And any kind of conditions or maybe grouping or any conditional formatting that you want to do. So I think of it as a 4-stage process, but you don't get to stages 2, 3, and 4 without understanding or at least having knowledge of what underlying tables you need to be able to produce it. I think everyone can quite quickly decide of what they want, but it's how you actually get there in the first place. So I think we'll do one that I've not seen out of the box for Acumatica, which is kind of delivery performance. And I think this is something that's always at the top of a lot of people's minds. When we come to talk about customer facing metrics. So I think a lot of the out of the box ones are great for internal KPIs. So you might be looking at inventory turnover, you might be looking at customer health, you might be looking at AR aging. But what about how your customers see you and the service you provide? And one of those, I know a lot of businesses do, especially in the distribution world, is delivery performance. Am I delivering on time to my customer's request? Okay, so you should be able to see Acumatica up. So I've just logged into Nirav. This is actually your demo environment here, which we're going to use. And to get to GIs, you probably already, if you have looked through your system of Acumatica already, you've probably already seen some inquiries sprinkled around all of the various areas. So if you're in the sales orders world, you'll be able to see inquiries here where we've already got some views of our data. So for example, we'll have customer details, and customer details are obviously it depends where you're at, what you're looking at. But essentially, you'll come in here. This is technically a GI, right? It's pulling from various data tables underneath and returning us the results. Similarly, in inventory, there's more in inventory here, but we have inventory summary, some deck stock, inventory turnover, transaction details. So these are the kind of inquiries that are out of the box. Now, within Acumatica, you have a customization section, and under here you will find generic inquiries. So coming to the screen here, just as it loads up, essentially you've got here lots of different inquiries that are out of the box, dependent on what department there are. And we'll talk about what this column means here, exposed via OData later on. But essentially, these are the inquiries that are already out of the box. There are a ton. So if you have just got onto Acumatica and you're not yet live, before you go live is a great opportunity to look through some of these. There might be ones that are here already that already give you something that you're looking for. But essentially, we're going to just start from a brand new one here. So we're going to hit the plus button. Everything gets wiped, and we're ready to start our new generic inquiry. So we're just going to call this one delivery performance. If I can spell correctly. Delivery performance. And you notice underneath here, the first thing I need to do is define some data sources. So data sources here typically are underlying tables. We can use other data sources, but most of the time you're probably going to be looking at your underlying tables, database tables. So we're going to add one. here are all the underlying tables I can do, just like normal in Acumatica, we can search for it. So I'm just going to start pulling in some of these. The ones that I know I need to know about for my GI. So we're going to bring in notes table. We need inventory.
So Peter, while you're doing this, quick question: is it probably good practice that even before getting to this point, you have kind of an idea of what data you should be looking for, or that you're trying to compile in your GI, like kind of have a sketch of a report, right, or an example in Excel or something like that that you could use and then help you guide in creating and bringing in these fields that you need.
Yeah, I guess a lot of the things that I've done when I've created GIs is based on looking at other GIs. There's a lot of overlap in the out of the box ones already, which kind of give you an idea, and it allows you to start building up this kind of mental model in your head
Mm-hmm.
of how things are connected and what kind of tables that you'd need for whatever you're trying to answer.
Yeah,
So a lot of these, I've already seen these referenced on other GIs, and a
yeah,
lot of this just poking around the system, finding
yeah.
out what's there to be able to bring them together. I think the end result, everyone knows what the end result is. I want a table that has list of customers, their orders, and whether they were delivered on time. So I think it's pretty easy to say what you want, but then this step one of finding the tables, poke around the system.
Yeah.
Um, you know,
Hmm.
just by viewing the back end of a generic inquiry, you're not going to break anything.
Yeah.
Of course, remember this is a browser-based cloud ERP. So as long as you're not saving anything, if you accidentally change something, you back out of it. Um, Go ahead, like be curious to find out what tables are what.
Yeah. I love how you mentioned how you said that mind model, and you kind of have to have a vision of what type of reports, because these reports your mind could easily kind of start wandering, and you start, putting a hodgepodge of tables together that really don't match. Right.
Yeah,
Because the key is that it constantly has to, the GI has to serve a specific purpose for it to be effective.
yeah. It's one of those things where I guess you've got to kind of distill down exactly what you want to see and what kind of business question you're trying to answer. It might be a KPI that you've had typically on an Excel thing that's manually compiled every week, every month, and think about what you're using already and how we
Hmm.
can lift and shift this into the world of GIs, because
Yeah.
as much as there's time to put these together in the first instance, once they are set up, that's it. You've got them,
You got them.
and
Yeah.
then they're just going to be pulling from once the essentially we're building the logic
Yeah.
behind what we're trying to
Yes.
have on the
So
front end.
what are you doing here, Peter, on the relations tab?
Okay, so the relations tab is all around about how these data sources that I've defined here are related to each other. So, how do these tables speak to each other? What are the shared values? So, um, here I'm just saying what the parent table is. We have this parent child relationship. And I know that the SO shipment table, which is kind of the high level details of a table, is joined to the SO ship line. Obviously, the line is more of the details of each shipment line that's on a shipment. So that's kind of the hierarchy between parent and child relationship. And in this area, what we're essentially doing is just first of all, in this top area, is saying what table I want to link to what table. And then underneath here, we're going to say how these are related. What particular fields of the parent table are related to the child table. So if we just take this SO shipment join to SO ship line, for example, I can say that if I click on the drop down, we're going to get all of the available columns from that table. And I know that the shipment number equals on the child table the shipment number. Okay. And a lot of this is just simply from being curious about other GIs already in the system. So it's finding out what column from one table is the same in another column from another table.
Like the primary key, essentially. making sure
Yeah, yeah,
those are
yeah.
matching.
Yeah, essentially it's a primary key. What we're kind of doing here is we're saying that there's two different joins. So you just got to be careful to be able to get a unique value. There might not be a primary key as such. It might be what we call a like a composite key, which might be the combination of multiple columns. So, for example, here, shipment number, that depends on your numbering sequence in Acumatica. You might have a numbering sequence that's shared across sales order versus sales blanket
Mm-hmm.
versus sales quote. You might not have like a prefix like SO, QT, um, SB for blanket. If you're just using numbers, that's not enough to be able to get to its uniqueness. So
Okay.
this here, what we're doing is we're saying that this SO shipment table and SO ship line are connected to each other by the ship number equals the shipment number and the shipment type equals the shipment type, because we want
Mm-hmm.
to be able to get to a unique um, connection. Otherwise, it's
Sure.
ambiguous. You'll end up
Right.
duplicating data, and essentially your GI is going to be you're going to be messed from
Mm-hmm.
the start.
That makes sense.
So parameters is the next tab here. The parameter is essentially saying, um, I guess here it's what kind of parameters you want on the front end of your GI, what you want to be able, what you want to be able to show or not show, or exclude or even include. For this one here, we're just going to have where the shipment number. Let's just. In fact, no. I think we're going to skip parameters. We'll kind of try and keep this pretty simple. We're going to go to conditions. Conditions in this world is essentially like filtering. What do we want to have as included and what do we want to exclude? Grouping, so if we want to do any aggregation, if we want to group down, this is the tab for that. For this case, I want to look at each individual line. So we're not going to have anything in here. Sort order is on the front end GI. Do you want default sorting? So we know, especially if you've already looked at GIs, you can already sort by different columns. Here, this is where we can already assign like a default sorting thing. I'm going to default here with shipment number. So we go SO shipment, then shipment number, and we're going to say ascending. And then I also, after that, want to sort on the SO ship line number. Okay, so this is going to have SO ship line number, a sorting. So it would be everything, all of the shipments together. And then if there's multiple lines on that shipment, it'll be 1, 2, 3, 4. So our sorting is set. Okay. Then results grid. So this is the other big area. Now we've essentially built up that data model through those other tabs. The results grid are the columns that I now want to show on my GI. And here you can see that the object is our table. So for example, I want SO shipment, and then the data field I want would be shipment number. Okay. Then as I expand this down, I can see other things. So maybe I want status. And status will give me whether this is shipping, whether it's completed, whether it's open, etc., etc.
On the far left, there's that little option to see additional columns. There is this ability to add a specific field here as part of the quick search. You won't see it, but you see use in quick search right there. Bring that over, and now you could then identify which one of these fields you want the user to be able to use in the quick search option.
Yeah, this is really powerful here. It's just a checkbox, and we can enable them or disable them as
Mm-hmm.
wanted.
Mm-hmm.
There's also a couple of things that are hidden by default when you're building this
Yep.
out that you notice that I've got here. There's two different types of aggregate function. There's an aggregate function and then a total aggregate function. So
Yep.
the aggregate function is how do we want to essentially aggregate this? Is this a sum? Is this a count? So if I double click here, we've got average, count, max, min as sum. And then total aggregate will be when you see it, if you're used to Excel, you know what I mean? Here's essentially the grand total that we have at the bottom. So make sure that you hit this, have a look at what's in there. One of the ones that I really like is if you're building out, I know we skipped ahead here with the results already pre-filled, but if you've got any kind of field where it's a calculated field, you want to go and add a particular caption because sometimes it can look a bit ugly and not really make sense to the end user. So this
Mm-hmm.
caption column here is where we can kind of tidy up our column headers. So for example, this one here, this SO shipment, all I've done here is just do the date diff function, and I'm looking at the difference between the actual ship date, the date that we
Yeah.
confirmed shipment, versus the ship date that was on the order. And that's essentially the one that's going to tell me whether we're late or not.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, date diff. It's just a calculation, and it will be if, for example, we delivered it or we shipped it before the ship date, we were early. If we ship it after that ship date, we were late. And then the caption here is just days early and late, and that'll give me back a numerical value. So once this is all built in, we can go ahead and save, which we've already done here. We can publish to the UI. So this is already published to the UI, but just show you the screen again. We have the title of this GI, how it's going to show. The workspace is where you want this GI to be. So here, this is all around sales, customer delivery performance. I put it on sales orders. It's up to you. You could put it in receivables, I guess, if we're talking about the AR world. But I think probably it's going to be the salespeople that are going to be most interested in seeing this information. So I've put it on the sales orders. The category, I want it to be within that inquiries section in the sales order workspace.
Yeah.
And then the screen ID is given for us. The access rights, pretty self-explanatory here. Set granted to all roles, set revoked to all roles, or inherit one. So if you've already got people with the right access rights to see the sales orders workspace, I can inherit the same access rights from that particular area. So you haven't got to
Okay.
go and think about, right, oh, well, it's the same group of people that can access this GI. You haven't got to worry about any of that. You just already pick one here and go, right, anyone that can see, this particular screen already can also see this screen. That's what we're doing here.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. Okay, so once it's published, we did it into the sales workspace within inquiries, and you can see now we've got this extra option within inquiries, which is our delivery performance. So clicking this, it'll behave just like every other GI, and essentially what we're seeing here is exactly how we set it up with those data fields. All right, and this is everything. Now, same thing applies. You can create your own filters. You can do shared filters. Anything that you want that you might think that others might need, you can set up here. So I've just done a couple of examples up here. We've got 2025 year to date. So maybe I just want to see current year. Maybe I want to see the full last year. And then obviously we know that all records are all records. And one thing I want to just show about this GI, again, you can get back to the GI here. If you have the ability to, you can just go straight in to edit inquiry here. You'll notice that on that inquiry, some of them were clickable. There were actually links down into something else. And that's what this default navigation does. It's auto checked by default. So if it's a particular data field that allows you to drill into something, with that checked, it will allow you to drill into that. So you might have noticed there I had country ID that was clickable. I might not want that clickable, so I can uncheck it here, right? But I want to maybe keep something like inventory ID because someone might want to then be able to actually go onto that item card. So now if I save this view inquiry, we'll find that we've still got that location ID.
Yep.
Similarly with state here. So you notice here state is clickable. It's probably not that useful. I can
Right.
uncheck default navigation. Maybe I want to
Yep.
see it, but the actual state card doesn't mean anything to me. So with it unchecked, save our changes, load up the GI again, and you'll see now that the state column is just purely a text. It doesn't actually let me drill into that particular state card.
Yeah.
Okay, makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this is it. Now we just got a normal GI, and we can filter and look at data as we want. You'll notice that we've got the fields that we expected here. Everything that we added is here, and again, same thing with the columns. We can add and see certain columns we might want to see. If I go to 2025 year to date, because in this demo environment, Nirav, you've got a ton of data. There's 2025 year to date. Now you can see some of these conditionals. So you'll see, for example, this column here, days early, late. Now this isn't pulling from any particular, this column doesn't exist in any database table because we created that logic on that date diff. So we're taking two columns already, confirmed ship date and actual ship date. And we're now showing that as this kind of conditional column that's calculating the logic. And you'll notice in here, in our results, when we look at this this particular day's early and late, we've also applied a style to it. So we're saying if we were on time, it's green. If we were late, it's going to be red. So when we look at this, we can see that everything's green, everything's good. So again, this is just the visual kind of cues that we can give people. If we look at 2024, we can see a few more here. So the reds are where we were late. So for example, when we look at some of these down here, we see we're massively late versus stuff that's on time.
Yeah.
All right. So this is only half of it though, because this episode is all around GI to BI, as we say. And I think a GI only gets you so far. This is tabular data. And I think really the benefit of this kind of data is to be able to distill it down to easily see, are we good or not? Essentially, that's what we want to see.
Exactly. And that is the goal, right? So think of, just taking this from a real world perspective, right before we look at the dashboard. But imagine you're like the CFO, and instead of waiting for 5 people to email you reports or refreshing spreadsheets or triple checking formulas, you have a CFO dashboard based on all these various different GIs that are being created inside Acumatica. So in Power BI, you open it up and you see live WIP balances, right? AR aging, inventory valuation, supplier scorecards, right? All automatically being fed by GIs. So that's the next part of this that we're going to kind of go into. So I think this is huge.
What I want to do now is I want to actually pull this out into the world of Power BI. So we have the ability in the generic inquiry, you'll see this particular checkbox here, expose via OData. So the way that we get data out, the typical way that most of us get data out of the system is via OData. OData, it stands for old school data. It's the old school way of getting data out of systems. But here we are as 2025, we're still using OData. So I've just enabled that and saved my changes. Now, what this will allow me to do is be able to see this as an OData connection, almost like an endpoint of my system. And if you need to know what maybe you've got other GIs that are already exposed through OData, you can get that if you just go to, this is our demo environment here, but all you need to do is go to OData and then your company name. So our company name is actually just company. When I go to that, if you're not already logged in, you'll get a little pop-up box asking to log in for with your normal Acumatica credentials for your tenant, your instance. But when you go to this will list out in JSON format all of the exposed endpoints through the OData connection. And as you can see, we've already got some that are just native. You've got some that are prefixed with BI, which are pretty useful because these are already built. For example, BI AR invoices. You've also got BI customers down here. Maybe you've got multiple branches. You've got the BI branch and company. But essentially, these are the ones that are exposed through the OData connection. So with that said, Nirav, let's pop straight over to Power BI.
Let's do it.
So Power BI, we're going to start with a blank report. Now, there's multiple ways, and I know that if you followed me before, you'll know that I hate connecting direct to my production environment. I always say that you should probably land the data somewhere first. There's added benefits of doing that. Data capture, change management, change data capture. incremental refreshes. Everything is a little bit easier when you're piping this into or landing it into like a lake house, or some kind of staging area, applying extra transformations, and then pulling it into a data warehouse, and then feed your data, your reporting layer
Yeah.
from nice gold
Yeah.
status data warehouse. But we're rough and ready today, and we're just going to get straight to those OData endpoints. We should probably do one about how to land JSON output into Azure Data Factory and pipe it into a
That would
data
be a good
warehouse.
one, actually. Yeah, that'd be a good one.
So what we're going to do for now, get data, OData feed is the one that we want. Okay, we want the URL, so we're just going to lift the URL that we have here. Okay.
There we go. Like magic. That was like magic. Literally
Yep.
just like magic. So
If you haven't already authenticated, I already have. You'll get a basic username password box again in Power BI World. They'll just ask you for your Acumatica username and password, and you'll have this come up. Now, this navigator is essentially showing us that list that we saw there in the browser, which are all of the different GIs or endpoints of various tables that are now available to us through that OData connection. So I'm going to bring in a couple here. I'm going to bring in customers. Okay. When we click on it, we'll see a little preview of the data. So I definitely want that. I also want to bring in stock items. This is a generic inquiry that's out of the box that isn't exposed via OData. So I've just gone in and check marked it, but you see I've got inventory ID here. So I'm going to have this one. And then I'm also going to have my SO line delivery performance, right? And I'm going to check that. Now we can see from the preview window here, the data looks pretty good already. It's kind of what we expect. But before you do anything with Power BI, I always say immediately hit transform data. Don't go straight to load, because we want to see
Yep.
this in Power Query. There might be things that we want to do instead, some other transformations. So that's going to open up this Power Query editor. You can see the three queries, those three that I've checked: customers, items, and delivery performance. So I might not want all of these columns, for example. I might want to limit what I'm actually bringing in. Delivery performance, the same thing. Maybe I only want a particular date range. Well, I can use Power Query here to filter down the data, so I'm not having a bloated semantic model. The one thing that I will do here is on the dates, I only really care about the ship date itself. Maybe the ship on, which is the one that we want to see. So I'm just going to get rid of these other date columns. It's just these other two. I'm going to remove these. I could spend hours talking about optimization of Power BI data models. The other thing I am going to do, though, is you notice this is a date time. Date time is super bloated, especially if you just don't need the time. So I'm going to just change this from date time to date. Get rid of the time element. Put this to date. Okay. Everything else looks good. I haven't got any errors. I've got some null columns I could get rid of, but I'm going to leave them. And then you can do the same for the other ones. Here's customers. So maybe I want to remove certain customers, and then same with stock items. Might want to remove some columns. I'm just going to put in the whole lot. In Power Query, you've got the applied steps down here, so I can actually see exactly what I've done on each one. But I'm going to come up to here, go home, and close and apply. So what that's going to do is create a connection and just pull in the data from those feeds that I've given it. So customers, items, and the delivery performance. Okay. Another best practice as this loads up, the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in a date table. So I know that I've got ship date in my system, in my delivery performance GI, but it's just purely a date. So if we have auto time intelligence enabled in Power BI, it creates a a separate underlying hidden date table for every date column you have in your model, which could be loads. Again, we ended up with if we do that, we end up with a bloated semantic model. So good practice in Power BI is to have your own explicit date table and link the date in your factual data to that date table. It's great because maybe you want to filter out weekends. Maybe you want to, maybe your fiscal year isn't January the 1st to December the 31st. You can't do that if you just use auto time intelligence, right? So I'm going to just use this external tool that I've got in the background, which is going to give me a date table. Don't worry too much about what I'm doing here, but I'm going to be bringing in a date table here. Okay. Now I'm going to go to the semantic model, and you can see that Power BI has already started to think about the connections between these between these three tables. So we know that this is my fact table. So this is my GI with the delivery performance. And then these two are seen as my dimensional data. They hold all of the extra values that I want. So that allows me to have a more efficient model. So if I click on this relationship, you can see that the relationship here is between customer name and customer name, right? Which means I don't need to, in one table, have 200 columns of everything to do with a customer, where that customer is located, who the main contact is, what country they're in, all of these other things. Don't store it in one gargantuan table. Just have the field that connects it to it, and then have a separate table. So this is where we store the city they're in, the country they're in, what type of customer they are, etc., etc. Because obviously, if we have this data in here, that city that they're in, as much as it never changes, will be duplicated for every single row in my delivery performance GI.
Right.
Adding needless bloat to the semantic model.
And performance time, right? And it just keeps, it'll increase the time it takes to load the report. So you want to take out as much, unnecessary data as possible and consolidate where you can to optimize the report.
Yep. And the other thing here is, here's my date table. You notice that I've got lots of different things that I can filter on: year, quarter, month, etc., etc. And I want to point it to my ship date. Okay, so here's all of my columns available that are all from my GI. We've got shipment date here, and I want this to be the connection. Okay, we're just checking it's many to one, so my date table just has one row for every date, and obviously my GI, we could have multiple shipments on the same date. Essentially, that's what we're looking for here. Okay, so we've connected this together here. So this is my kind of basic, what we call a star schema approach on data modeling, which Power BI absolutely loves. Let's just go to the front end. So here's the front end here. I'm just going to add, because I'm finicky like this, we're going to add a theme. The default theme is terrible. But essentially now we've got a blank canvas. We can start adding, a normal kind of tables. So maybe I want, I don't know, maybe I can have a nice bar chart here where I want customer name going down the side. I want the early, late as my legend. And then maybe on the x-axis, I'll have shipment number. Okay. And then maybe let's have a quick slicer here. And the slicer can be from our date table, the year. We'll just quickly change this to a nice drop down. So here's my year slicer. And I only want to look at, say, 2024. Okay. So obviously we've got some blank values. We can have a look at what these are. Maybe they just are blank because they haven't been shipped yet.
Right.
So again, same thing applies here. We can have another slicer. notice in our GI that we had status. That was the one that I pulled in to show us whether it's, obviously if it's open, we don't know if it's late or not yet.
Yeah.
So maybe I can have, ones where it's definitely gone. So
Yeah.
complete, confirmed, and invoiced. And then here, this is essentially a list of our customers, and then we can see how many were late and how many were on time. It's
Hmm.
as simple as that.
Wow.
So as we add these, we can change the bars, we can change the color. So we can say, right, the ones that are late, let's have those in a kind of a
Yeah.
bad color. And then the ones that are on time, we can have those in a nice green. All right.
Yeah.
And now we're straight away, we're in the Power BI world.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
now DAX is the rest of the stuff. We can do DAX
Yeah.
measures that says, maybe we have a DAX measure that says how many as a percentage of total shipments to this customer on time. So we can have kind
Hmm.
of an on-time percentage metric.
Hmm. Hmm.
And some of this stuff I think is probably a little bit easier in
Yeah.
Power BI.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's an extension, right, of Acumatica. It's
Hmm.
not something that we can
Yeah.
easily do. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think this has been amazing, right? For those folks that are struggling with getting data out of their system, putting it into a visualized dashboard. And if you're on multiple Excel spreadsheets at the moment, and then you're bringing that to Power BI, you can see how easy it is within Acumatica to create the GI. Once you have the GI, kind of tweak it, fine tune it. Once the data looks good, exposing it to OData, getting into Power BI, and getting into a nice visual dashboard as demonstrated here. I think
Yeah.
it's great.
Yeah, I think there's lots of things you can do here. I'm just going to add extra columns here. Um, One of the things I quite like in the world of Power BI is doing parameters. So when we go to the modeling, we can do um, new parameter fields, and I can add some parameters here. So on time parameter. Maybe I want to have a look of customer name. Maybe I want to also look at it by item class. Item class here.
Yeah.
I think it's actually description 2.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, let's add it as a slicer. Okay. So here I've got a parameter which is taking 2 different fields. Remember, all of this is connected in our semantic model. So you notice here when I did this, I said, show it to me by customer name. Maybe I want the end user to be able to decide, well, okay, I want a bar chart not by customer name, but by the description of the product. What I can do is
Yeah.
I can take this out, and then this parameter that I created, I put this in, and now I can either see it by customer name or I can see it by item class.
Wow.
So now we're giving extra features to this end
Yeah.
user. That's not
Yeah.
something you can do in a GI. So someone
Right.
might say, well,
Right.
that's great. I've got a nice customer-based delivery performance of super granular data, but I want a rolled up view by item class.
Right. Right.
That could be, and probably is, an entire new GI.
Yeah. Exactly.
So you imagine your sales orders, your sales workspace, and the inquiries thing. You're going to have a bunch of like delivery performance by customer, delivery performance by item, delivery
Right.
performance by this, by that.
Right.
um,
Right.
so yeah, that's the power of Power BI. But I guess I
Yeah.
could spend maybe we could change our parameter here. We
Yeah.
can add another one. Let's add another one for let's call it country. So I'm hacking the code here, but I'm essentially just mimicking the same thing. BI customers country. You remember all of this is linked, so
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't really matter here.
Yeah.
So just add a country, and then we can see by country.
Yeah.
Tell your demo environment is US based, but this is
Yeah.
the kind of areas where we can start to do some investigations and see,
Mm-hmm.
like, are we
Mm-hmm.
poor in a particular country? Are we
Yeah.
seeing particular product families that are always late? Because this is the kind of stuff that can go hidden.
Yeah. I think this is one of probably many podcasts that we're going to do around GIs, and as there's new functionality and we learn deeper ways to continue to bring this value a part of generic inquiries to our our users that watch this podcast, or anyone that listens to it on any other platform. Although listening to it, you won't get the visual benefits of us going through Acumatica and putting this together and showing it visually, but you may get something out of it. So I think today was great. I think there was a lot of great insights. I think this is an introduction. We did go deep in the introduction. I think we'll probably do more of this here down the road, but I think it's been pretty good. Not too bad. We could definitely kind of wrap this episode up and look at this at a later date. And if there's any questions from any of our listeners or viewers out there that want to learn more about GIs and maybe a specific topic that's been bugging them or bothering them, more than happy to kind of continue this conversation as we wrap up today's podcast on generic inquiries. So just kind of as a recap, right? Generic inquiries aren't just a technical feature inside Acumatica. It's a powerful business tool at the end of the day. It helps you put real-time, accurate data into the hands of people who need it most without waiting on IT or getting stuck in Excel spreadsheets.
I think that's the real core of this for me, is that this is just a move away from getting bogged down in Excel reports. It's one of the things that I always kind of grit my teeth when we talk about Acumatica. We know Acumatica is really strong on the ability to export to Excel. Most screens, I think, and more screens in Acumatica, you see that little Excel icon, and it immediately downloads it in Excel. Great, but I think that's just going backwards. I think that's where we've come from, and it's not really. Excel has been around for 40, 50 years. Yeah. It's going to be around for at least another 40, 50 years. It's not going anywhere. But I think from the way modern analytics and modern BI is going, there's better ways to do it. And I think the ability to download is great for controllers that want to do some more analysis, for people that know how to use Excel. But I think from a KPI reporting, collaboration, sharing of business intelligence throughout a company, I don't think that going back to downloading Excel reports and throwing them at each other in emails is progressive. So I guess it's one of those things where you got to toss up. This does take time. Like building GIs takes time, but you can't really break it. As soon as you start a new GI, you're not going to break anything else. It's kind of going to break anything. You're not editing. There's no kind of write back to the database tables. You're just reading from them. So I suggest people just play around building GIs, look at how pre-built GIs are, and then pull into Power BI and have a play around.
Yeah, absolutely. So, well said there, Peter. I think thanks for everybody joining us today. And if you're ready to make your Acumatica data work harder for your business, start with one simple GI, right? You'll be amazed at how quickly you'll get, small insights lead to big wins at the end of the day. And you keep honing in on your business. So with that, Peter, I think until next time, keep pushing your business forward with better information, better systems, and better decisions. I think, this has been great. I think, I always learn a ton of data stuff from you. You're like the data guru in my ecosystem. So appreciate all the hard work that went into doing this specific example. And for anyone out there that has questions on GIs or data, reach out to us. We're available on LinkedIn. You'll find us on all your major streaming platforms. You could email us. You can email me at nirav.shah@CirrusERP.com. Peter, where can they find you? Where are you hanging out nowadays?
Mostly on LinkedIn, Reddit, Acumatica community forums. If you stumble upon my blog, petenicholson.co.uk, where I kind of ramble on about business intelligence. But probably LinkedIn these days is the main way.
All right. Excellent. Well, Peter, thank you. And we'll catch you on the next one.
Yep. Have fun.